You know, imagine that that you tomorrow are going to eat at a restaurant here in Canada or in Toronto, where the so-called philosophy and idea behind the place was that it was going to incorporate all the different cultures or the culture that there is in Canada onto a plate. What would that be? Of course, you're thinking that that would involve a certain type of ingredients that are specific for the place. And but what are they? You know, because in the Western world we eat the same thing all over. We're just at Whole Foods, and you have the exactly same thing as we have in Denmark, more or less. And the things that they have in the supermarket is the exact same thing. Of course, quality difference that they serve in most restaurants. I mean, okay, perhaps there's caviar and a piece of foie gras on there, but it's mostly the same. So in order for us to kind of shape this cuisine, or at least see if we could start something, we of course needed to explore the diversity and see if there was enough products to cook with. And we started this journey, this product discovery journey on the Faroe Islands. And we actually decided that the first trip would be in the North Atlantic. You know, 3 cold chunks of big rocks, Faroe Islands, which is actually 17 rocks, and Iceland and Greenland, because these are areas that you don't usually go for products. You think that mistakenly, you know, it's about seal and whale and other very indigenous food that people don't eat anymore. And on that trip was where things really started to take shape. We went to the Faroe Islands and we experienced langoustines of unseen quality for me. I still haven't found any better quality than on that specific island, on the Faroe Islands, where they're caught on 500 meters depth. Cold waters, just incredible quality. We found urchins, something that we've been importing in the past 20 years from France, if we wanted it. Usually they were 5 to 6 days old, meaning half dead and not that good. I never even know that they existed in our part of the world. We found raisin clams, the same story, always been searching in other parts of the world for these products. And then of course we found a nature that was just in abundance. Like I said, usually I've been used to just cooking with, perhaps throughout a year, perhaps you had 80 ingredients to cook with. From when we're talking about plants and vegetables and roots and so on. It's more or less that. Suddenly, you take a step into nature, into wildlife, and you start reading about that and talking to people that take part of this wild nature. And you find out that that we have, in fact, 59 edible berries in our region. I mean, you must have all the same here in Canada, but you know, I was used to strawberries and raspberries and 3, 4, 5 others. We have more than 150 types of horseradish in Denmark. And they're all called horseradish, of course. There's no variety, you don't talk about the different varieties, which was also a great surprise. Which was just another discovery. Suddenly you start thinking about varieties. You know, we found out that there's 9 types of Jerusalem artichokes. But besides that, we found out that there's more than 1,000 types of edible mushrooms, ranging from, of course, just normal tasting button mushrooms type to mushrooms that taste of roasted poultry. We found out that you could eat lichens.
How did you find out? I mean, did you ever try things and think, oops? I mean, you know, I mean, how do you know? I mean, are you a part-time botanist now as well? I mean,
of course, I would never recommend people to chance it. Especially with mushrooms, that can be very dangerous. I've never done that myself, but I mean, I've tried many times eating things that I don't know what it is. Of leaves, yeah.
Could you go before?
You can choke a bit, and you can also, you can even vomit, and you can even
all 3 at once?
Run to the toilet. You can even do all things together, yeah. But it's for half a day or for a few hours. It's, you know, it's worth it.
It's worth it. I knew you were going to say that.
And of course, in this journey as well, we also found, well, an abundance of plants and roots and so on. You know, suddenly we found out that that on a tree you can eat more than just the nuts of it. Usually you eat hazelnuts and walnuts in our part of the world. I guess you have the same here. Well, I found out that you can eat the beech nut, you know, and there's a way to eat acorn, and you can even eat the shoots of all these trees, and you can use the bark to infuse into stocks and syrups and so many things. And you find out that during wartime, people actually use the bark of certain type of trees to make flour to bake with.
You do a lot of pickling and preserving this to get you through the winter.
We do that as well, and we also found out that you could you know, here you have maple syrup. We found out that the sap of birch syrup. Same thing. Same thing, not as sweet, not as much sugar in it, but in spring, you know, we serve this as ice water, ice cold birch sap that has 1% sugar to it, and it's the first sign of spring. You know, it's when the wood feels the temperature changing and preparing itself to blossom. Then it, you know, projects all this water into the stem. And that you can drink, and you cook it down to a syrup. And there was just such a big range of discoveries throughout everything.
When you forage, because you talk about that a lot, and you talk about your foragers in the book, but you go out yourself. I mean, I know a lot of chefs do have suppliers who are foragers, but they don't necessarily, I mean, I'm not speaking for chefs, but it doesn't seem like they're going out and doing that themselves. You literally go out, you don't only go out, you take your chefs with you to do this, and that seems to be a key part of becoming part of the nature, the terroir for you as well.
Well, I would just like to say that I think, you know, we are very often associated with foraging as if that is our restaurant, you know, that makes our restaurant. And I think a foraging is just one part of a step towards nature or back into nature. I consider ourselves to be a restaurant that has some type of pact with nature. And by that, I mean that, you know, that our nature is our inspiration. This is where we find our products. This is how we ended up cooking. You hear people saying that the dishes in the book, they look like a piece of the shoreline or a piece of the woods. It's not intentional. That's just the way it comes through, because this is where we walk constantly, and how we source our ingredients, and that has become ultimately our inspiration. And more than that as well, once you start doing that and noticing the changes of seasons, and, you know, seeing a small seed that just tips up in the forest bed or floor, sorry, and you follow it week by week, you see how it comes forward, it becomes stronger, and you know how difficult that can be for this little plant with no protection. These are not farm things. These are just there, and everybody can just stomp on them or eat them, or there's diseases and so on that can attack it. And it comes through, and once you think it's perfect, you pick it and you eat it. And that becomes your reference point always for that type of ingredient, which is also a very big lesson, because usually you get perhaps ingredients that are several days old into your kitchen. And here you are as a chef, you know, it's natural that you look at what you think is the most perfect one, like you would if you pick a peach or something. You would always go for the one that you think is perfect. Same thing is when you're out there looking at mushrooms and plants and berries and roots. And it's so important, this lesson, you know, that your reference frame just becomes so strong and more quality. And then you pick it and you bring it back to the kitchen, you clean it, you prep it, you cook it, and you serve it. That whole circle is something that I never expected to be so satisfying as a chef, and perhaps even as a person.